Kia ora talofa namaste, haere and welcome to the Nichecache. We're coming at you on January the 7th. Recording this on a Tuesday here in the lovely land of Aotearoa, and we are here to go deep into Aotearoa sport, as we always tend to do. Got plenty of deep dive yarns on the website, thenichecache.com. Just head over there, have a little read. And if you love a bit of reading about Aotearoa sport, you might as well sign up to our newsletter as well via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com, where a lot of the information that we discuss here in the podcast comes from. We publish the newsletter every Monday and Friday completely free. Then we record our podcast on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, we're back in the regular flow of a bonus podcast for folks on Patreon. Big up the Patreon whānau and anyone with a paid Substack subscription, because if you're signed up to our free newsletter via Substack, you can upgrade that to a paid Substack subscription and access our bonus podcast, where I think we are going to go even deeper, get into the even more nitty-gritty about the Blackcaps. And about Super Smash Cricket, because we love Super Smash Cricket. Maybe a little bit of A-League football previews, Flying Kiwis, because they keep popping up during the week as well. Point being, every Thursday we record a bonus podcast for the generous folks funding our mahi through Patreon and paid Substack subscriptions. We go for a couple hours on a Tuesday talking all sorts of jibber-jabber about Aotearoa sport. Then we go for another hour on Thursday's bonus podcast, strictly for the generous folks funding our mahi. We also have Buy Me a Coffee. If you want to buy us coffee, that's always welcome. Shout out to the folks who have done that over the past few weeks. We appreciate your support. And that's who we are. That's what we do. We just love Aotearoa, and we love Aotearoa sport, to the point where we just got to throw up a couple of our favorites. And I'm just thought of this right now, so I'm going to give you some time to warm up, because I want to know your favorite female Kiwi footballer in the A-League, which includes the Wellington Phoenix, and of course all the ladies playing for Australian teams. I want to know your favorite Kiwi in the NBL Basketball League as well. And while you're whipping up those opinions, I want to first shout out the Super Smash, because it is an awesome sporting competition. How about that? I think just a concentrated couple of weeks of Super Smash funk, it's my favorite Kiwi sports competition. Now, obviously, we've got the NRL, we've got the A-League, we've got the NBL competitions stretching over to Australia. NRL is probably just the favorite big status competition, but Super Smash is up there. Super Smash, so much entertainment, so much random shit that happens, like Dane Cleaver's brother with the dreadlocks taking a catch in the field yesterday. We've had all sorts of crazy stuff. There was the collisions. Claire Tickner's hair, which was described as pure class on the Super Smash social media account. I wouldn't necessarily describe half green, half M&M bleach hair as classy.
I don't think class was the look he was going for.
But it was entertaining nonetheless, and Super Smash Cricket is very entertaining, and it is very fun to watch. Part of that fun involves the two biggest hitters in the Super Smash. And these are my favorite players in the Super Smash so far. The one and only Tom Bruce, leading all run scorers, only Super Smash batter in the men's competition with more than 100 runs. And he's also the only men's Super Smash batter with a strike rate over 200. Tom Bruce, 132 runs at a strike rate of 209.5, leading run scorer, leading strike rate. Tom Bruce he's hitting the ball well. He's hitting the ball cleanly. and he is smashing boundaries, and I love to see it. So shout out Tom Bruce, very entertaining cricketer for the Central District Stags, captain of the Central District Stags, and that leads me to my other favourite cricketer in the Super Smash, and that is the captain of the Northern Brave woman, Jess Watkin, who also has the highest strike rate in the Super Smash, 166.6 runs, and she is third for, 166.6 strike rate, the highest strike rate in the Women's Super Smash. Only female Super Smash batter with a strike rate over 150, and she's also third for runs. 90 runs at a strike rate of 166.6. She is smashing it everywhere. Got a couple of wickets as well. If I'm bigging up Jess Watkin, I got to go closely followed by Jess Kerr, who is the only female Super Smash batter with over 100 runs so far, 120 runs, strike rate of 142.8. First for runs, second for the highest strike rate. Jess Kerr, the batter, is in fine form, also pretty damn good with the ball. So shout out to Jess Kerr up in the ante with her batting. Jess Watkin smashing boundaries as she tends to do, and Tom Bruce classy hitting, which I don't know which way's which. I don't know if Tom Bruce's classy hitting smells a lot like Bevon Jacobs, or if Bevon Jacobs' classy, effortless hitting smells a lot like Tom Bruce. I'm going to go Bevon Jacobs following on from Tom Bruce, but Bevon Jacobs is, I'm not going to say on a heater because I've heard that far too much during the Super Smash and the Kiwi cricketing summer, but Bevon Jacobs just, he whacks boundaries too. But shout out to Tom Bruce. Who's your favourite female Kiwi in the A-League?
Well, look at what I'll just reiterate, because I was watching I watched that. Well, there was the Wellington game the other day. It was the first one that Elise Perry played, so I turned it on to see Elise Perry bat for Wellington, and she was already out when I turned it on. But then I got to see the Kerr sisters put on an unbeaten 100-run partnership. So apparently this is what happened. Jess Kerr and yet another one had a couple months working with Craig McMillan, and now here we go. Bevon Jacobs as well got a little bit with Craig McMillan, didn't he? Only for about a week with the Blackcaps, which was super weird how he was still commentating on the games. He was also being the batting coach, but whatever. Who am I going to go for with the A-League Women's? Who am I going to go for here? I almost feel like I got to pick a Phoenix player and a non-Phoenix player, because I sort of view them in two different things. I know that's not the question. I'm cheating a little bit, but I want to say Lara Wall for a couple of reasons. One, because I think she's been excellent for the Phoenix. Two, because there's a little bit of an underdog story there, being her first season, and she's replacing Michaela Foster in that position. And there's she started the season on the bench, came in at a couple good cameos as a substitute, then nailed in a starting position. Team have been better when she's been playing. I think all of that's been helpful, but then also the fact that she's just someone I've watched for several years at the National League level, thinking, here is yet another player playing in the National League who's good enough to go at a higher level. The A-League comes calling, and she pretty quickly adjusts to that higher level. Like it's a vindicating thing when you've been saying how good Lara Wall is for a few years, but also it's just one of a number of ones where I've said this over multiple years, where there's Devon Jackson is another one who's doing similar things now at Newcastle, and there's a bunch of them across the Phoenix and across all across this play, all across the A-League Women's. There's a lot of whenever these topped them, and Michaela Foster was one before Lara Wall. There's another way in which she's following in footsteps there. There's so many of these cases where the best domestic players in the New Zealand National League, it's not just that they can step up to the A-League, it's that they almost always do. Almost all the ones who get an opportunity look really good at the next level up. So I think that's a very good thing for our National League, and it's a very good thing for me who follows the National League and the A-League and gets to sort of report across that bridge, and seeing the success stories of which Lara Wall is the latest.
So you just got the one? You're not cheating?
Well,
What?
if you pressed me for someone at an Aussie club, I think I'd lean on Kelly Brown because I think her story is quite cool. But unfortunately, like there's a couple different stints at the Phoenix. Highly regarded youth player, very good in the National League when she was playing there as well. In between those stints, and or on either side rather, and she had a couple of really strong seasons playing in the New South Wales, I think it was, sort of the Premier League in Australia, where she was scoring a bunch of goals. Her coach there from MacArthur gets called up to be gets hired to be the new Perth Glory coach. She follows over. She gets a gig there at the A-League level with her NPL coach. Scores, I think, 3 goals in the first 5 or 6 games. So she's having a very good start there. Unfortunately, though, she did get a knee injury, so she wasn't playing against the Phoenix on the weekend, and hasn't played for a couple of weeks and probably won't play for another week or two afterwards. So she's currently out injured, which is a bit of a dampener on the old matters. But she the top scorer in New Zealander this year? She might well be. Yeah, she must be. Most of I've looked through in the newsletters a couple times at the men's and the women's competitions for the Kiwis around the place, and it seems like other than Costa Barbarouses and apparently now Grace Jale is all of a sudden starting to bang a few away, which is a massive deal for the Phoenix if that can become a consistent thing. Like that's kind of
Yeah,
maybe the
hold that
difference
thought.
between
Hold
them
that
being
thought.
a top six team and not. Yes, we will have to come back and expand on that later. So there's not a lot of like the best New Zealanders in the A-Leagues seem at the moment to be defenders and goalkeepers, but Kelly Brown is up there. Kelly Brown's doing nice things, sort of establishing herself at this level because she didn't get a lot of opportunities in her previous stints with the Phoenix, which makes this another one of them sort of like underdog prove yourself stories as well.
Favorite Kiwi in the NBL?
Well, you can't really go past Jale because he kind of epitomizes all that you want to see from a Kiwi basketball full stop, let alone in the NBL. But of course, it's true wherever he goes. And that trio at Melbourne United is so much fun to watch because they cover so many bases. Where you got Jale doing his Defensive Player of the Year stuff and sort of pulling a few strings there, and then Rob Lowe comes in and does some a little more obvious work, but in his own kind of subtly ways, where he's a big man shooting threes, he's a big man who can get assists, he grabs rebounds and this stuff. And then you got the shooter Flint Cameron coming off the bench and having a big step up in his second season, and his 3-point percentage is very impressive, and it's been pretty impressive more or less wherever he's played as well. It was true in college, it was certainly true in the New Zealand NBL, and it's been true in hints for the Tall Blacks. I don't think we've quite got the full capacity of that for the national team yet, but that's coming. But Shipley is the leader of that sort of three-headed dragon, so I think he's got to fly the flag, as he has been doing for a few years.
Do we have a couple more basketball points I want to quiz you about? But let's just take a break. Let's get a bit of mindfulness. What do you got, Chief?
A little bit of mindfulness coming via the poet Robert Browning, who said, "The great mind knows the power of gentleness." In particular, I do like that kind of contrast with the power and then the gentleness in that thing. He is a poet he was a poet. He hasn't been alive for a couple centuries, but still, the poetical nature's shining through there with the contrast in the words, but also gentleness is a power. There is strength to that. There's strength to subtlety, and
I reckon true power involves a lot of gentleness, a lot of calmness, a lot of empathy, and those type of traits that
restraint even
that aren't associated with power. And maybe if the powerful people adopted those traits, the world would be a better place. But we got to do it ourselves. We got to tap into our own power and adopt those traits, adopt those ways of being. There's actually a book I've been listening to, not reading, listening to, The Majesty of Calm. And I thought that was a similar type of stuff going on there. Back to basketball. Steven Adams has been playing a bit for Houston Rockets and had a nice little, not necessarily like a breakout performance yesterday, but maybe in the context of his tenure as a Houston Rocket, it did seem like a bit of a moment where Steven Adams just exploded with not three-pointers, but just a couple of rebounds, as he tends to do, a couple of box outs, a couple of screen assists. Typical Steven Adams mahi, and he seems to have hit a groove with the Houston Rockets. What did you make of the recent performance from Steven Adams, the one and only Houston Rocket?
Yeah, 8 points, 9 rebounds. I think 6 or 7 of those were offensive rebounds as well, typical for the bloke. He also grabbed an assist because, of course, he did all of this in less than 17 minutes. And did they win against the Lakers? I think they did win that game, eh? Let me check the old box score because, of course, the most important thing with Steven Adams, 119, 115 win. The most important thing with Steven Adams, you want to check the old plus minus where he was plus 17 in 16 minutes and 34 seconds, which was the best mark in the entire game for either team. So in his own way, the most effective guy on the court, despite playing less than half of the game, considerably less than half of the game. That was one of his biggest outings, though, so far, and it comes after a little stretch where he's had sort of like, he had a few more, he stopped skipping out every second game. For a while there, he was just sort of play a game, don't play a game, play a game, don't play a game. But when he would play, because he had 2 or 3 days off in between, he would play 10 to 15 minutes, and then he started playing every game, but it was more like 6 or 7 minutes and maybe a little bit more in favorable matchups or, foul trouble to other big men or that kind of stuff. But he's played in 7 consecutive games now, so they've stopped rotating him. They seem to be starting to build up his minutes a little bit more. I hope so, because he's been actually, like, this was a bit more obvious because he played 17 minutes, not 6 or 7 minutes, but he's been very effective in the minutes he's gotten, even if they've been sort of small samples there. So he seems to be fitting in alongside his new teammates there. He seems to be finding a role. He seems to be, I wouldn't say winning over the coach because like they traded for him. They knew who he was as a known quantity, but maybe winning over the coach in terms of his fitness and his capacity and just showing that he's getting back to his best basketball. And they asked him afterwards, like, how's the knee? And he basically said, sweet as. It's fine now. We're back on track. We're ready to roll. We sort of, manage it here and there, be aware of it, but it's not a hindrance or anything like that anymore, which is massive news. And I think it starts taking the Houston Rockets towards, or accelerates them towards, a situation where they will have a decision to make, because at some point in 5 or 6 weeks, there'll be a trade deadline. And you've got to sort of pull trigger there on, are you going to commit to Steven Adams as being a valuable part of your rotation through the playoffs, which the Houston Rockets will be making because they've been pretty good this season. They've got a big winning record. They'll be making the playoffs. They'll be there. Do you want Steven Adams to be a big part of that? Or is there something else in your team and he's, something else in your team that you need, and maybe he's someone who you're looking at as trade bait, like prove who he is, flip him to someone else who needs him more than you, and then get something back in return or whatever, keeping in mind that he is on an expiring contract. So if they keep him, he might leave as a free agent. He also might not. He might stay and re-sign and have finish his career at the Houston Rockets. Who knows? But there are some decisions to be made that I don't think could have been made before now, because you had to see how he reacted on his knee and you had to see him get back to capacity. And he seems to be doing that now. Therefore, we start to think about what the future may hold. But in the meantime, it's just bloody good to have Steven Adams grabbing rebounds and throwing down dunks and doing this good stuff out there. And it's been hard to follow him because he's had such a limited track throughout the season. It just felt like he was almost operating on, the Houston Rockets were doing great, but he was almost operating with the handbrake on. And now it seems like they're letting that one loose a little bit more. And hopefully we start to see the 17 odd minutes or so become closer to a benchmark rather than the outlier. And if that's the case, I'm sure we'll see plenty more big plus minuses, plenty more offensive rebounds, plenty more big screens, and all them good Steven Adams things.
And it is a reminder for any Kiwi sports fan, maybe even the Aussies who keep talking about an NRL draft. They seem to want to copy everything American. And when you want to copy everything American, and you want to implement a draft as a player, that takes away your choice of what team you go to it. So if you're an emerging young NRL player and there's an NRL draft, you have no choice about what team you go for your formative years, which seems very important, a very important choice for a young athlete to make. And the other thing is trades. If you want NRL trades, well, as a player, you got no choice where you're getting traded to. And even though I love the Steven Adams Houston Rockets vibe, I love the connection, I love the matrimony there, because Ime Udoka, he's a tough bugger. And I reckon he wants Steven Adams there, and I reckon Steven Adams will want to stay at the Houston Rockets. But the only thing you hear about Steven Adams is him being in trades, which makes me sad. But that's the way of the NBA. But it's a reminder, sometimes in Aotearoa and in our sporting leagues, we actually do things maybe a better way.
I tend to agree though, in that my gut feeling is that he will stay with the Houston Rockets, that they traded for him because they think that he's going to be an effective player when it matters most, and that is why they've built him up so slowly through the first 4 months or whatever it is of the season, is because it doesn't matter how he starts, it matters how he finishes. So they're just sort of going for the cautious approach because they want him around long term, as in for the rest of the season, but also probably if you want him for the rest of the season, you probably want him beyond the season as well. And I suspect Adams would, more than most NBA players, I think he would respect that careful approach, and also he would feel a little bit more of maybe a sense of loyalty and home and belonging to a team that would offer him that, rather than an entitlement of assuming that any team would do what they can for him. And he would probably want to stay if the role is good there as well. But we'll find out what that looks like up until the trade deadline, because it's really just about what his role is now on the court, because we've done all the other stuff. He's back. He said his knee is sweet as, so it's how much is he playing and how much can he offer the Houston Rockets? Probably quite a bit based on what we've been seeing in the last few games, admittedly in smaller samples, but he's, hopefully we're getting up there now. Hopefully we're starting to see those minutes rise substantially.
The Breakers, I believe, had a win and a loss over the last week or so, so they are still second to last in the NBL. I don't really have anything new to add to the Breakers discussion, and we do have fresh boxing insights from yourself. So we might just quickly transition through the basketball. The Breakers are doing their thing. They're just doing the same shit. Kind of niggly, kind of annoying, kind of good, but second to last in the NBL, so who cares?
I don't know about the kind of good.
Well, Taco Ball, he's scoring some points. They won a game. Just
yeah, it's nice that they've got Taco 4 going at the expense of everyone else, and it's nice that they beat a team that's lost 15 games in a row.
Yeah,
but yes, let's move on.
Boxing, because I know you're full up with boxing, so I want to give you some space. We've got a David Nyika fight against Jai Opataya coming up now. We've also got Joseph Parker on the radar, and you've told me Mea Motu also has a title fight. So give me the lowdown on the Aotearoa boxing status, because I did find it interesting. I don't know if we talked about it on a podcast, but old mate Dubois, he was front and center after that Tyson Fury Usyk fight. It's like, bro, everyone's talking about Dubois and he wants to fight against Fury or whoever and all this shit. And it's like, bro, you got to fight Joseph Parker first. And Joseph Parker's on a heater. But it's a similar vibe with David Nyika, because my basic boxing knowledge, and I know Opataya is an Aussie, so when I hear his name discussed, I'm always like, oh, he's that Aussie. All the boxing stuff I hear is like Opataya's top of the pops. He's one of the best, whatever weight division he's in the world. And they're talking about him stepping up. And it's like, well, you got to fight a Kiwi first. It seems like the dudes from Aotearoa are just kind of bucking against the trends and the latest hot thing in the world of boxing. But that's just a outside perspective looking in. Give me the full breakdown of the Aotearoa boxing landscape over the next couple of days / weeks.
Yeah, next couple weeks, because the next 6 weeks is kind of incredible. We've got this situation where there are 3 New Zealand boxers in title fights, like world title fights, major bouts going on. David Nyika against Jale on the 8th of January, which is tomorrow, which is a Wednesday night, which I don't know why you're fighting a world title fight on a Wednesday night, but whatever. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's actually quite a nice night to be watching, but it's probably a little bit weird for the spectators getting out there. Maybe everyone's still on holiday, who knows. On the 25th of January, you got Motu against Ellie Scottney in a unification bout there because they're both title holders. And then on the 22nd of February, Joseph Parker versus Daniel Dubois. So Nyika, I think, is a little bit... He's the biggest underdog of these three. He wasn't supposed to be fighting this one against Jale Pataya. It's he's sort of like a late replacement. There was a German fellow who was going to fight Jale Pataya, but he broke his ankle 3 weeks out from the bout, and it was just, you go through when that happens for a title fight, the organization just goes through the rankings. Okay, next up, do you want it? Next up, do you want it? Next up, do you want it? No one wanted it except for David Nyika. So somehow, even though he's very young in his career, he's only had about 8 or so professional bouts, and most of them have been the kind of like set up, just get some rounds and you're going to win this one easy, which he has won pretty comfortably in every single one of his fights. And usually to where he's been a little bit disappointed that he didn't get more rounds out there afterwards. He should get his rounds against Jale Pataya. That's not going to be a problem. But yeah, he was the highest ranked. He's not even very highly ranked, but he was the highest ranked guy to want to take the fight on short notice, because you can understand why most people would be like, this is a serious fight that I'm building towards, but also like, you're not even giving me time to prepare properly. But it's a little bit easier for Nyika because he is based out of Queensland, fighting with old is it Noel Thornbury, and Jale Pataya is, I think, a Brisbane dude. So they're based in the same state, which means that they have actually sparred several times. They don't train together, but they have, they're close enough that the next best kind of options within the vicinity. So they have crossed over their trainings in a few times. In fact, when Jale Pataya won his IBF Cruiserweight Championship in July 2022, David Nyika was actually on the undercard for that fight. So he's been involved in Fight Night with him as well in his own way. Wouldn't be surprised if they were sparring partners in some way leading into that one as well, which is often the case with the undercard guys and the top card guys. Opataya, 26-0, 20 knockouts. He's clearly like he's earned his title. He's maybe looked a little bit wobbly in a couple of his defenses, but he's far more advanced than David Nyika. So this is definitely a tricky fight for Nyika, but that just shows the guts of the fella, as he was the one who took the fight. He doesn't feel he's got anything to lose, and ultimately, like, he doesn't have anything to lose. The kind of undefeated records that boxers have doesn't mean anything nearly as much as whether you can win championships and stuff like that. So I think people get a little bit freaky about the always got to go stuff, whereas, risk it, go for it, get in there. That's what Nika's attitude is. And that's what Joseph Parker and Motu arguably have been doing as well. Motu's fight against Ellie Scottney, that has the IBF, WBO, IBO, and Ring Magazine Super Bantamweight titles on the line. This was supposed to be a fight that took place in last October, but Scottney got injured, so Motu fought a Australian opponent on short notice instead, pummeled her in 4 rounds, and now she's got the Scottney fight coming up. That will be in England, so it is the away one. Scottney's got 3 of those bouts, and Motu's got 1 of those bouts, so understandably she gets to call the shots there. And then, of course, Joseph Parker versus Daniel Dubois. We got a lot more time to sort of digest this one because it's not till 22nd of February, but Parker's had a couple of very good wins against Zhili Zhang, against Deontay Wilder, put himself right there on the map. Daniel Dubois knocked out Joe Joyce and put himself right there. He took over the which one is it? The IBF heavyweight belt, which Alexander Usyk had to give up in order to take the Fury rematch. So then Dubois swept up, won it as the interim. Wants to fight Usyk, but of course he has to get through Joseph Parker first. And Deontay Wilder once wanted to fight Anthony Joshua and went so far as booking that fight in advance, but he had to fight Joseph Parker first and he lost. So there is a precedent here, and yeah, that's the end of this trio of fights. But over the next 6 weeks, we've got 3 big Kiwi heavyweight title fights.
You just mentioned 3 heavyweight title fights. They're not all heavyweight, so are they?
No, don't. Yeah, I've rushed myself. Only one of those is a heavyweight fight. That's the Joseph Parker one, obviously. The other ones, Nyika Opataya is cruiserweight and Motu Scottney is super bantamweight.
Beauty. I was trying to cook up a boxing, cricket, crossover segue, like who's the heavyweights, who's the cruiserweight, who's the bantamweights, and
You might get some big hits in there. I don't know.
yeah, I get what you're saying. In that sense, Tom Bruce, he's a knockout artist. You know, he's there to finish the fight. Same with Jess Watkin. But I want to talk about Blackcaps cricket because they are in the midst of their ODI series against Sri Lanka. And not only, like, first and foremost, like, Super Smash is incredibly fun. We got Kiwis showing up in full force to watch the Blackcaps take on Sri Lanka. Big crowds for the T20s. Big crowd in the first ODI. We got the second ODI coming at you from Hamilton on Wednesday. We are recording this on Tuesday, which means that we have Canterbury versus Otago in a Super Smash game day today, Tuesday afternoon. Blackcaps on Wednesday, then Wellington versus CD game day on Thursday. So this gives us an away tour to Sri Lanka, T20s and ODIs, and a home series of T20s and ODIs against Sri Lanka. Nice little gauge, nice little measurement of where the Blackcaps are at in ODI and T20 cricket. And I think they're doing pretty well. Like, overall, they're winning games. And like this, not an expert on Sri Lankan cricket, but it does seem like a fairly strong Sri Lankan lineup. Like, a lot of big names, a lot of guys they're talking up as, oh, he's got an IPL gig, or this guy bowls 150, whatever it is. And that's probably why the Blackcaps lost in Sri Lanka. But now they're winning in New Zealand. I think that's a very impressive, like, everything you were saying about domestic football, National League football stepping up to A-League, like, that applies to domestic cricket and international cricket on the Blackcaps pipeline as well. And I think this is a very, we'll see how the next ODI goes, but this is a very nice little summary of the Blackcaps pipeline, where they are winning games in front of big crowds, or they're at least playing competitive games in front of big crowds with a pretty funky squad. And we've talked a lot about the young talent in Aotearoa and how that has crept into the Blackcaps and how that has freshened up the Blackcaps. Otherwise known as a refresh, otherwise known as a freshen up. They've added some spice to the Blackcaps. The likes of Rachin Ravindra, Will O'Rourke. We've seen Glenn Phillips become an all-format player. We've seen Nathan Smith make his debut. Ben Sears has made his debut. T20 cricket, we got Tim Robinson opening the batting. We got Zach Folks just being exquisite with bat and ball. Now Mitch Hay seems to be the frontline ODI T20I wicketkeeper. There's a lot of young talent stepping up. There's fresh vibes emerging into the Blackcaps. But in a weird way, the freshest thing about the Blackcaps are the older players who have freshened up the Blackcaps. Most notably, Will Young and Matt Henry. I think Jacob Duffy is in this mix as well. And I'd extend the invitation out to Mark Chapman. Maybe even Michael Bracewell. But to me, the best freshen up zone is Will Young by himself. Then we can go a bit further to Matt Henry. Then we can go a bit further to some of the older lads who have taken first 11 opportunities, especially like just stacking up games, stacking up series, and pushing their case forward for more honours, more selection. And obviously the freshen up vibes, we've got Mitchell Santner as captain as well. He's got a winning record as a T20 captain, can't remember off the top of my head, and I think he might be building into a winning record as a ODI captain. But he's got far less games as captain in the ODI arena. But he's been a very good T20 captain over the course of like 20 to 30 games. So a nice sample size there with a winning record. The Matt Henry freshness is a bit more obvious because he's like He's kind of settled into the test team as the front line. Like, his freshness is him becoming the best test bowler in the Blackcaps. Part of the Matt Henry freshness is also him becoming a T20 monster. He's got a T20 bowling average of 23.6, and he was fantastic in the T20 series against Sri Lanka. 2 wickets, 1 wicket. And obviously, he's an ODI monster. He's always been an ODI monster. So here are Matt Henry's international bowling averages: 29.8 in Test cricket, 25.8 in ODIs, 23.6 in T20 internationals. Undisputed, undeniable, Matt Henry is the best New Zealand bowler right now. And the freshness
I wonder
becomes...
how many other Blackcaps we have. This is not an answerable question, but it's, rhetorically, I wonder how many other Blackcaps bowlers there are in history who are under 30 in all 3 formats. It might just be like Trent Bolt, and I'm sure there's a couple other stragglers along there who've played fewer games, but Matt Henry's doing crazy things there.
Yeah, I appreciate your rhetorical question. Maybe just wait till the end of a sentence before you ask the rhetorical question, or come with your facts. Like, if you got the facts, hit me with the facts, but don't ask rhetorical questions. Crikey, Jack. I need answers. I don't need more questions. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's C newsletter on Friday. I might look this up because.
But Matt Henry, he is awesome. He's the best bowler from New Zealand right now, and he's again, the freshness is him becoming the best Test bowler and also excelling in T20 cricket. He's played 83 ODIs. He's only played 30 Tests. Only played 21 T20 internationals. But the super fresh thing is Will Young. Like, Will Young's just amazing. He has excellent scores across a bunch of formats in his last 10 games. He didn't necessarily start the Indian tour very well, but he finished it with 71, 51. He's had a 19 and 30 in the T20 series in Sri Lanka. Scores of 48, 26, 56 not out in the ODIs in Sri Lanka. His 1 test against England, 42, 60. 1 Super Smash game, 50. 1 ODI, 90 not out, which means Will Young has 4 50-plus scores in his last 5 innings. 2 of them are not outs. And in this 4-game stretch of ODI cricket against Sri Lanka, Will Young has 220 runs, averaging 110, strike rate of 91.6. Which means he's got the highest strike rate of the 4 Blackcaps who have scored 50-plus runs in these 4 ODIs against Sri Lanka. That's why you always got to just check, like, obviously T20 cricket, you've got to keep an eye on the strike rates because you don't want dudes like just dotting them up. And there's a certain baseline of performance that you need to have in T20 cricket, which we can assess further in the Super Smash breakdown. But it's just a good gauge. Like, if you're the leading run scorer, again with a Tom Bruce, Jess Watkin, if you're the leading run scorer and you've got one of the best strike rates, that's just... those are green flags. Those are fireworks surrounding the statistical information. And Will Young, like, we can go stats, we can go eye test. When you watch Will Young bat, you're having a good time. Like, he's playing all sorts of shots. And they are just beautiful to watch.
Except for that 1 sweep shot where he did the splits, but...
I mean, that was beautiful
still effective.
To watch.
Beautiful might not be the word I'd have chosen, but...
he middled it. He slipped over and he middled it.
which
what more
was
do you
incredible.
Want? Like, I'm talking beautiful shots. I'm talking boundaries, regardless of how you're standing.
Yeah, well, tick that box.
If you can hit a boundary on your backside, mate, you're doing well. That's beautiful to me. I'm not a cricketing snob. Like, however you want to do it, it's beautiful. And Will Young's doing it amazing. There's a whole lot of like wrinkles here. The one thing I do want to settle on before I throw it to you is, if we're trying to build out this Champions Trophy ODI squad team, I think a good place to start is 3 best batters. Three best batters, first three batters in my ODI team. Now, my three best batters for Aotearoa, we're going Kane Williamson, we're going Rachin Ravindra, we're going Will Young. And there's my rankings. In the ODI team, I'm going Will Young, Rachin Ravindra, Kane Williamson. And you can chuck, like, obviously, Daryl Mitchell deserves to be in the conversation. We've got Glenn Phillips. We've got all sorts of cricketers who can fill out the rest of the ODI spots. We've got a lot of all-rounders. We've got good bowlers. But if I'm thinking about a Blackcaps team for an international tournament, major tournament, where we may even get India versus Pakistan. If I'm talking about a major tournament, I want my three best batters in my first three spots. Those three dudes are Kane Williamson, Will Young, Rachin Ravindra. That wasn't in order. That was just me listing them. Now, of course, there's always going to be this conversation about Devon Conway. Devon Conway is worse than Will Young right now. Will Young is better than Devon Conway. Personally, I don't think Devon Conway's coming back into the Blackcaps. And I'm feeling really good about that top three for an ODI team, given all the skills and attributes you need in ODI cricket.
Yeah, there's a few funky ones when it comes to that Champions Trophy squad, where I think the way you've framed it with the freshness of the team that we're seeing at the moment, there's like, because Conway is the biggest example of this, where the funky selections almost have to do with how much you want to embrace the freshness and how much you want to go back to the things before the freshness, which is in this case Will Young versus. I'm sipping on freshness too if I can, because I think Will Young, like you said, is just fresh up.
Specifically fresh up.
Yeah,
Are you just juice? Are you
not really either? I got bad teeth, so those things are full of sugar. You know, I got to be careful with that stuff. I keep my sugar intake to my cups of tea. But I'll keep sipping on that if I can. You know, you can have a fresh brew for sure. But I agree with what you said. I think Will Young is just plain and simple right now better than Devon Conway. Rachin Ravindra is better than Devon Conway. Well, Devon Conway doesn't have to open. I mean, you can find a spot for him in there at 4, but I think Daryl Mitchell is also better than Devon Conway. And if you're investing in Mitch Hay as your wicketkeeper alongside, you know, him and Tom Latham, the two wicketkeepers clearly in the ODI scene, I think Hay might even be just number one now at the T20 stuff. We'll see. Like, we need to see them play more series and get an idea a little bit more. But I mean, Tom Latham is probably in that team as 5, and if he's in the team at 5, he's going to be keeping. And then if Mitch Hay's in your squad, you don't need Devon Conway as a backup keeper. Finn Allen's no longer a backup keeper because he's not going to be playing. I mean, you kind of, in that case, if you make that decision that Young and Ravindra are your best opening pairing, I don't know that there's even a spot for Devon Conway in the squad, let alone in the first 11. So that's where it gets quite interesting, because are they willing to do that? I mean, he doesn't have a contract, so there's an excuse there that they can lean into, but they're also Williamson doesn't count, but he's his own unique thing. He can do what he wants because he's earned that. But Lockie Ferguson feels like another example where do you bring him back without a contract, or Adam Milne even? Because when they went to Sri Lanka, Lockie Ferguson was in that squad. And when Lockie Ferguson got injured and couldn't play, Adam Milne was the guy that they called up. But since then, we've seen a little bit more Nathan Smith and a little bit more Will O'Rourke and a little bit more Zach Folks, at least in the T20 stuff. So, and Jacob Duffy has been excellent in these games against Sri Lanka recently. So that might actually be the most important factor in all this. If you say Will O'Rourke is your fast bowler and Duffy can come in there and do the job that maybe Tim Southee used to do to some extent, with Matt Henry being Matt Henry at the other end, well, then you've got decisions to make there as well on where you go. Doesn't look great for East Sodhi getting back in there. It's with Mitchell Santner as your frontline spinner, and then because you've got that's less about Sodhi versus Santner. It's more about Sodhi versus Bracewell and Phillips and Ravindra as alternative spinning options. Playing in Pakistan, it'll be dry, but it'll also probably be flat. So I don't know if it's not as clear a leg spinning great. Although he did go on the the last time they played in Pakistan in test matches, he did go and bowled quite well from memory. So, we'll leave that one at least a possibility. But there's a few of these different situations there where it's like some of these guys who, and in Devon Conway's case, it's clearer than anything. It's like you're right now not playing ODIs that are preparation for the Champions Trophy. Well, if you don't get picked for the Champions Trophy because someone else came in and played in your place and scored more runs than you were scoring, well, tough luck. You kind of made a decision that left this door open for someone else. If someone else goes through that door, well, that's how international cricket's supposed to work. So was how sport full stop is supposed to work. You can't protect your space if you're not there to protect it. So, yeah, well, it's a little bit. I think when that squad does get named, I think we're in for a little bit of a gauge on how things look. But if we're going by recent trends, I suspect the freshness wins out.
Here's a quick little attempt at a squad just to help frame the next two ODIs as well versus Sri Lanka. I think Ferguson will be in the squad. I think Ferguson, you realize you're just about to repeat yourself, and you're just like, well, I don't need to say that because I just said that again.
That is a commentary trick, though. I think Ferguson should be in the squad. I really think Ferguson should be in the squad. That's you hear that plenty of times. You'll repeat yourself, but just a little bit more emphasis the second time.
So my top 6 batters, we got Will Young, Rachin Ravindra, Kane Williamson, Daryl Mitchell, and then Tom Latham, wicketkeeper, Glenn Phillips, number 6. So I'd have Chapman and Hay as backups in the batting department. I can see a situation where Devon Conway's in the squad but doesn't make the first 11. But I can also see that not happening. And then we've got bowlers, Will O'Rourke, Matt Henry, Mitchell Santner, Lockie Ferguson, Jacob Duffy, Michael Bracewell. So that's a squad of 14. Usually these squads are 15 players. You could either get in I think the most likely players to come in for that last spot will be Nathan Smith or Zach Folks. You could also select Tim Robinson to boost the batting, or you could go with Ishodi to boost the spinning, whichever way you want to go. But I think that's the core of the ODI team. And I'm not going backwards. Like a lot of people, they still want to go backwards with Blackcaps cricket because they think that the Blackcaps were only good when they had a couple of the golden generation of players. And I'm pretty confident in my perspective and my belief that the New Zealand cricket is just awesome at cricket. Kiwis love cricket and Kiwis love playing cricket. And we're producing really good cricketers who will take the Blackcaps forward. And I think that is evident in the whole fresh vibes across the Blackcaps pipeline. What have you made of, I think, so Will Young scored a lot of runs. Matt Henry's taken a lot of wickets. You did mention Jacob Duffy. Is there anyone else, any little pockets that you've seen from the last week or so of Blackcaps cricket? Because we did have I think there was one more T20. Let me just pull up the T20 stats to get a perspective there. Like Tim Robinson had a nice knock. Rachin Ravindra's kind of been simmering along. And yeah, so any other little pockets for the Blackcaps in there from their series against Sri Lanka, but that's just top of mind heading into a major tournament?
Not massively. I think something that was a big talking point earlier on the summer was their fielding. I think their fielding's been very good lately. It sort of came right after the first test was shocking against England, but it sort of came right in the rest of that test series. But it's not just the catching that's been very good. I think that there's been a couple of run-outs that have been awesome. Was it Santner had one in one of the recent games? I remember as well, my favorite one of them all was Nathan Smith running as in the Test series, running at Harry Brook was fantastic stuff. So they've been able to to manufacture wickets in the field as well as with the ball bowling. So there's been a clear trend back towards expectations there for the Blackcaps. That's been good. Other than that, I mean, not really. It sort of feels like they're doing what they need to do, but you get a nice little contributions from a few different players as well. Like Daryl Mitchell in the T20s smacking some big runs was good because it felt like he maybe needed some of that. I think the one thing we're still waiting on is a big Rachin Ravindra score. He's had a lot of, like you said, I think simmering was the word you used there. It feels like he's had a lot of good starts and he hasn't sort of ripped into one yet, but we know he can. And I'd rather see him getting out the way he's getting out, where it feels like he's in and then like picks out, like the first ODI, he picked out a fielder on the boundary trying to hit a six to bring up his 50. Like there's a little bit of judgment there where it's like you could have picked a better shot. You could have, I mean, a little bit less risky in that spot. You didn't have to go for that. We were ahead of the run rate kind of thing. But also, if he's getting himself out, it's a lot better than Devon Conway dangling the bat out there and being nicked off or inside edges onto the stumps over and over and over again. Like Ravindra is out there putting in competitive battles against the bowler time and time again. He's not getting out cheaply and early, so that's fine. I sort of feel like that is simmering. That is a case of a guy who the next time he might just not make that mistake and he scores an unbeaten 100. Who knows? Tomorrow he might score an unbeaten 100 leading into the David Nyika title fight. We'll see, but it's good stuff there. And then on top of that, it's Matt Henry being amazing with the ball in all formats, because he was always amazing with the ball in ODIs. I looked this up and he's never had a year averaging under 30. Never had a calendar year averaging over 30, sorry, with the ball in ODI cricket. He did have a year last year in which he didn't play a single ODI, which the Blackcaps in general didn't play very many. And when they did, they rotated a little bit. So there weren't a lot of a lot of opportunities there in general, but which is a weird thing that when they're now leading into a semi-major tournament. It's not a World Cup, but it is a Champions Trophy. There is a trophy on the line. We did win it once upon a time 25 years ago, so it's a trophy that for a little while there didn't exist, so they could squeeze in more T20 World Cups, but for some reason apparently they brought it back. So cool. We'll try win it again. But yeah, like Matt Henry has always been great at ODIs. He used to not play T20s, and he used to be kind of bang average, mediocre at test matches. Like he at one point his average was above 50 and floating in the high 40s for quite a while there. And the last 3 years, he's been amazing at all three formats, which is very funny when you think like it's a straight line for his ODI stuff. He's just continued on what he's always been doing. The T20 stuff, the reason he wasn't so good before is because he wasn't playing. It's not like he was playing and getting smashed. He just wasn't playing a lot of T20s. Now he's playing a lot of T20s and being great. The test stuff, he did used to play and he did used to get smashed, and now he's unplayable. He plays and he's unplayable. That makes sense, but it doesn't make sense if you don't follow sporting lingo. But whatever. Matt Henry's just great. Matt Henry is New Zealand's best pace bowler right now. He's our best bowler, full stop. He might even be our best cricketer, full stop, considering his availability. He's always there and he's always taking wickets.
I think best cricketer, you're looking at, I think Daryl Mitchell deserves a salute in that discussion. I think it's Matt Henry and Daryl Mitchell for the overall best Kiwi cricketer.
I'm happy with that.
But I'd say Matt Henry, his test stuff's the same as his T20 stuff, though, because he wasn't playing consistent tests. So he'd pop up for a test and he'd have to do a tough job, and that didn't really... this doesn't really align with just dominant performances. Slide back to Ravindra.
Well, the other thing with Henry, what changed is Trent Boult stopped playing. So when Trent Boult stopped playing, and it wasn't just when Henry was playing, he was bowling first change, third choice bowler. He was bowling with the new ball, and he's so clearly just more effective with the new ball.
Slide back to Ravindra. The good thing about Ravindra, especially in one-day cricket, is he has a ODI strike rate of 109, let's round it up, 109, and he's got a list A strike rate of 101. So in both one-day formats, Rachin Ravindra has a strike rate over 100. So even if, like, okay, Rachin Ravindra, because he does feel someone like he's, as you said, he can get out at any stage, regardless of how in he is. And his last 10 games, he's got a lot of single-digit scores. I'll go through them quickly. 65, 9, 5, 4, 7, 0, 34, 24, 3, 6, 18, 44, 8, 1, 69, 45. Now, there's some test scores in there. But I feel like, and this is the statistics as well, and then when you watch Rachin Ravindra, if he's opening the batting and he scores 40 runs off 25 balls, off 30 balls, you're off to a good start. He might get out, then we got Kane Williamson coming in, and it's all good. But Rachin Ravindra, he scores quickly in one-day cricket without smashing it. That gives, like, Will Young's just going to take his time, but he can score quickly as well. Just double check Will Young's strike rates, because he does score quickly for someone who doesn't really try hard. 88 and 90 strike rates, which over a long period of time. So far lower than Rachin Ravindra, but he can up the ante as we've seen lately. So I'm like, Rachin Ravindra, he will put up big scores. Like, he's just a really good batter. And we're kind of dealing in the waves of the prodigies. Kane Williamson, Will Young, Rachin Ravindra. That's the prodigy wave. There's other good batters who emerge. Daryl Mitchell is one. But those are the dudes who the streets are talking about when they're 15, 16 years old. It goes Kane Williamson, Will Young, Rachin Ravindra. I think now we're getting into Reece Madiu range. Maybe someone else. Hopefully someone else as well. Maybe 2 prodigies, 3 prodigies. Who knows? Just lots of them. But yes, Rachin Ravindra scores his one-day runs specifically very quickly. And that, when you put it alongside Will Young and Kane Williamson, I think is pretty damn impressive. We don't need to go down that route. But I do want to talk about Will O'Rourke, because that leads me into Super Smash, where Will O'Rourke, ODI against Sri Lanka. He bowled 10 overs, 5 RPO, no wickets. Will O'Rourke, Super Smash, 4 overs, 11 RPO. Will O'Rourke, the bowling phenom, he has gone 2 games with no wickets and lots of runs. Now that alone, who cares? But Will O'Rourke, when he took no wickets in the Super Smash, one of the craziest game days of Super Smash I've ever seen, and it was on the same day, there was a collision in the Big Bash, collision in Super Smash, collision somewhere else, and it was the weekend of just absolute mayhem, because I think Bumrah got injured and Naomi Osaka got injured in the tennis final. Everyone was just getting injured. Crazy shit was happening. To be honest, it just feels like crazy shit's happening everywhere. So just slow down. Take a moment to relax. Ground yourself, because it is chaotic times out there. But in this game, before that, we had a Canterbury capitulation again. Last summer, I did a newsletter about the anatomy of a capitulation for the Canterbury woman, and then they capitulated again at Eden Park. Respect to them, they've had a tough 2 summers. They haven't been winning many games recently, but they might win today against Otago. So I don't want to go too hard into saying that they're not very good. But it was fascinating to watch them capitulate at Eden Park against Auckland when their 2 overseas imports, Matty Penner, the Aussie, walked past the delivery and gave up on the play to be stumped. And then Shikha Pandey, the Indian import, was run out. She was past the crease, but she didn't ground her bat past the crease. So your 2 imports gave up to be dismissed as your team capitulated. As far as overseas import contributions go, that is diabolical. To be honest, it's aligned with how the Canterbury women have been performing. But again, they're playing today, so we'll see what happens. long story short, get back to the point. Canterbury, Kyle Jamieson, Will O'Rourke, Henry Shipley, same bowling attack. Will O'Rourke, no wickets, 11 RPO. Kyle Jamieson, no wickets. And it was left to the one and only Henry Shipley, 5 wickets at 4.7 RPO. So first and foremost, we got the trifecta of tall, freaky Kiwi seamers playing for the same Canterbury team. And guess who was in that team? Regardless of who's available, 3 tall seamers. All 3 have played for New Zealand. All 3, Jamieson, O'Rourke and Shipley, have at least one pocket of international cricketing excellence. For Shipley, I think it's T20 internationals. For O'Rourke and Jamieson,
it might be ODIs.
Yeah, maybe. For the others, it's a bit of everything. Shipley is probably the worst of the 3, but he has done some fantastic stuff for the Blackcaps. And you still have Angus McKenzie in the first 11. Like, regardless of who Canterbury is selecting, they're always selecting Angus McKenzie. Do you know the difference between Angus and McKenzie and Jock McKenzie yet?
No, I still get them mixed up. But one of them hit the other one for 6 first ball when they came onto ball. I think it was Angus hit Jock. Is that right? It was 50-50 chance, like a toss a coin.
Like,
but one of them hit the other one for 6 up almost into the main stadium, Eden Park. It was amazing, great moment.
Like, Angus plays for Canterbury, Jock plays for Auckland. It's obvious. You're frustrating me here. You're pissing me off. I don't know if you're just teasing me or whatever, but it's all good. I did think, because I've seen Martin Guptill, I think he hit Shoaib Akhtar out of the Eden Park #1 over what is otherwise known as the West Stand. Now, Martin Guptill also hit a ball into Eden Park #1. I think Martin Guptill is one of, if not the only players. I don't think he actually hit the ball into #1, but I'm pretty confident Martin Guptill has hit a 6 from the Eden Park outer oval into Eden Park #1. And that would make Martin Guptill one of the few players to hit a 6 out of Eden Park #1 and into Eden Park #1. That's just a funky little bit of trivia that might not be true, but I thought it was pretty cool because Jock McKenzie, I think that 6 did go into Eden Park #1, which is a big hit when you got to hit it up and over the grandstand to get it into Eden Park #1. Again, Jamieson, O'Rourke and Shipley in the same bowling attack, but it was Henry Shipley who dominated 5 wickets. And I was just fascinated to see that game unfold because we also had we've had the Kerr sisters dominating. We've had the McKenzie brothers playing. Jock McKenzie had the better performance against Angus McKenzie in this game day. And I think Jock McKenzie is a fantastic cricketer. Take nothing away from Angus, who's a fantastic cricketer because he's always playing for Canterbury regardless of who's available. But Jock McKenzie, I think he's going to me, he's already in the mix of like up and coming Blackcaps. Who else do we have? The Boyle brothers. Jack Boyle was playing for CD, and we got Matt Boyle playing for Canterbury. Matt Boyle was one of the best Canterbury batters in this game. Obviously, we had the big Bevon Jacobs innings as well. But don't overlook Shipley. Because not only is he tall, so he's got the Jamieson O'Rourke tall factor, but he also has a funky action. And now we're seeing a lot more of these dudes around Aotearoa. You've got Jock McKenzie is a natural athletic action. Everything is smooth. Everything is just a rhythm. Similar with Will O'Rourke. It's a bit more helter-skelter. And you've got, he describes himself as a baby giraffe or whatever, but you've got a lot going on there. But you can see it's just a nice flowing action. Nathan Smith. Another one. Nice flowing action. You've got those type of dudes. And then you've got Shipley and Zach Folks, where they might not have the speed or just the obvious X factor. But when you include their actions, suddenly it's a difficult bowler to face. Like Zach Folks would have seen nice little one. Zach Folks, Kiwi Folks, folks would have seen more of him in that Blackcaps window. That action's unique. He gets hoop and in swing, and he's bouncing dudes at 135 kilometers an hour because of his action. That's what makes him who he is. Henry Shipley is tall, and he's got a unique action, which I can't really describe, but he gets similar, all these dudes. Jamison moves it both ways. Will O'Rourke moves it into right-handers. Zach Folks moves it into right-handers. Henry Shipley's go-to kind of regular mahi is into right-handers. And that's all from their action. Their skills allow them to move the ball both ways, but their go-to action leans the ball into right-handers. And then you've got like Nathan Smith types, Jock McKenzie types who move the ball away from the right-handers, more quintessential, typical Kiwi seam bowling. That's a bit of a tangent there into the Super Smash, but you can pick up anywhere there as we get deeper into Super Smash.
Well, I have a fact, the genuine proper fact here that I can throw out here, which is that Henry Shipley has more ODI wickets than Kyle Jamison. Very surprised to notice that when I was looking at it, but Shipley's got 15 of them, Jamison's got 14 of them. So, yeah, it's definitely ODIs, which is Henry Shipley's big format. I'll check where did I put the thing?
But his T20 cricket is excellent.
Except for his T20 internationals, where he's played 4, taken 2 wickets at an average of 70.5 with an economy of 10.8. But yes, his actual T20 overall stuff is his best average of the lot of them, and quite comfortably his best average.
I'm still tracking the 10 sixes across all 3 competitions. Bevon Jacobs and Brett Hampton are the dudes to watch out for. Both have 10 plus sixes in Plunkett Shield. I think Hampton has 10 plus sixes in Ford Trophy. Bevon Jacobs might have 2. And I don't know what they are for Super Smash, but I'm tracking that. 10 plus sixes in all 3 formats is pretty funky. Another little thing on the men's side. Well, yeah, so Foxcroft is first 4 wickets. Henry Shipley is second. But there's these dudes. This is the Super Smash here. Do any of these names ring a bell? James Hartshaw, Angus Shaw, Rohit Gulati.
They ring bells, and as much as I saw them playing within the past week, they don't ring bells in that I would, except Angus Shaw, I think he might have played a bit before. I'm not sure. Those are, yeah. Speaking of cricketing freshness, there's 3 more.
James Hartshaw took a 5-for for Wellington. Angus Shaw is doing fantastic all-round mahi for CD, 5 wickets, massive strike rate in his 1 innings as well. And Rohit Gulati made his debut for Northern Districts, 3 wickets yesterday in their loss to CD Stags. Did you see Bevon Jacobs batting for Auckland against Canterbury at Eden Park a few days ago?
Yes, I did watch that one.
Was that your first
effortless 6 down the ground? Well, over cover, I think it was, eh?
I mean, he hit a few of them.
He had a couple of 6s. There were multiple, but there was that one shot in particular, which
but the
replays in my mind as we mentioned him.
So that was your first major dose of seeing Bevon Jacobs, because we've talked a lot about him. We've had the clips of him. Like, what did you make? Like, because I think your perspective might be in tune with the casual Kiwi cricket fan. Okay, there's this dude. He's been selected for the IPL. Now I get to see him bat in the Super Smash. Like, how did that all fit together for you?
Yeah, it probably was if not my first time watching him live, because he'd played some games for Canterbury last year. If not my first time watching him live, at least the first time watching him live with an awareness of who he is, and also seeing him actually showing what he does. So yeah, it probably was a little bit of a not an introduction, maybe an education, perhaps is a better word. I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't know. He's had a wild trajectory, because you you don't normally get the Blackcaps call up in the IPL stuff before people have really seen the Super Smash version of you. Um, the Finn Allen trajectory is a little bit more of the what you might expect of the big Super Smash into the Blackcaps into the IPL stuff. But I mean, you see hitting that clean, you have an indication that there's something about a dude, right? Like, and especially when as you've highlighted, he's shown this in other formats as well, which frankly is something Finn Allen never did. Finn Allen still has never found a way to be like a first class hitter or whatever. He's not that version of him has never evolved. He's had some moments in ODIs. He's certainly had some moments in one days and domestically stuff, but predominantly T20 with Bevon Jacobs. You can see the hitting that makes him such an effective T20. I still kind of want to say prospect, but also he has an IPL contract, and maybe it's not. He does also still feel like an IPL prospect, though, in a way. Like, we'll see how much he actually gets to play there. Probably not much, if at all. But at this stage in his career, if you're going over there and just doing net sessions with those guys, like, what an opportunity, what an incredible experience that would be, and a learning experience too, but a developmental experience, I suppose. But yeah, to hit cleanly with power is a pretty rare thing, and so early in his career, you can see that already about him. So yeah, I'm happy to jump aboard this dude has something special about him wagon.
Can you just get a more concise answer? Like, how did you feel? How did you feel watching it?
As in an emotion, I would
Yes.
say I was going to say excitement. I think maybe enticement, if that's a word, enticing. I don't know. It was a little bit more tantalizing than just plain excitement, which is a bit more of the moment. This is of the moment, but also how much more can this dude do? There's the future prospecting element to it as well. So we'll say I don't know if enticing is a emotion, but whatever. It's close enough.
For a wordsmith, you're not too flash at chucking the words together, but
That's why I use a thesaurus.
that's why you're right. Um, ba, 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 ba. You mentioned first class hitting. Like, Bevon Jacobs isn't a hitter. He's not a slugger.
No.
Yes, he can whack boundaries, and his hype is based on him whacking boundaries. But as we've talked about a few times, his Plunkett Shield runs came slow. He hit sixes in the Plunkett Shield because he's in the 10 plus sixes across all three formats competition, where we don't have a prize because we can't afford a prize. But he bats according to the format in first class Plunkett Shield cricket. He is just a classy batter who then has the ability to extend his strokes. He's got the clarity of mind to follow through with his shots. And when he's got this kind of swing that I've seen a few times where you can see his whole body just getting into the swing. It's usually when the ball's going straight down the ground. And if you just watch the flow of his swing, that ball's gone 1,000 meters away. Just because of all the technical aspects of his body position and how he swings the bat is precise, premium, optimum for hitting boundaries. And because I've clipped up a lot of Bevon Jacobs stuff, I've been early on the Bevon Jacobs bandwagon. Like, it was last summer we're talking about Bevon Jacobs and how he hits the cricket ball. But then that first game of Super Smash, that was his, because he's got the IPL contract, got called up to the Blackcaps but didn't play, to me, that was a very important insight about how the Blackcaps are still developing players. Like, they're not trying to rush you into the team. There's still a process of integrating you into the Blackcaps culture, how they operate, the way they do things, that is bigger than just playing cricket. Like, you need to spend time with the lads. You need to spend time with the boys in this environment, and then we'll get you the game time. And especially for someone like Bevon Jacobs, because he's got that hype, everything's happened fairly quickly. But it's just a nice slowdown moment, like just integrate you into the Blackcaps squad. And I think that is quite useful considering I have Bevon Jacobs as one of the best all-format batters coming up in New Zealand. But that happened. Then he goes back to the Super Smash. His first game of Super Smash, he comes out and just smashes boundaries everywhere. Takes excellent catch to win the game as well. Like that's what, like Henry Shipley, I think there was an Auckland bowler who did well off the top of my head, maybe Jock McKenzie. That's why Henry Shipley taking 5 wickets, conceding 4 runs and over stands out because of how easy it is to hit boundaries and score runs at Eden Park, the outer oval. Other dudes were smashing boundaries. But the other dudes in that game did not have the same context around them that Bevon Jacobs has. And he just stepped in and did the stuff he's been doing. Just clean, powerful striking, hitting singles, getting the twos he needs, no pressure, calm and composed. And I continue to be impressed by this dude. But again, Bevon Jacobs isn't, like, he has a unique skill set, but he's not a unique cricketer in New Zealand because we've got lots of fantastic cricketers on the rise. And just because you mentioned Fernand, I've got a hot take. I reckon Tim Robinson's just a better batter than Fernand. And I can think that. There are some stats that back it up. But when you look at how the Plunkett Shield teams are selected for Auckland and Wellington, Wellington always selects Tim Robinson to open the batting. That is his job in any game he's playing for Wellington. When Finn Allen plays Plunkett Shield, A, he doesn't score many runs, and B, he's probably batting down the order. I think Finn Allen is a slugger, a hitter, a whacker. And I think Tim Robinson is just a pure batter in a similar way to Bevon Jacobs. I think they both have the ability to expand their games. Like, they got a long way to go as far as to getting into the other format teams like the Test team, maybe the ODI team. But they have that upside, they have that potential, and they've already shown glimpses of that in the Plunkett Shield, in the Ford Trophy over a long period of time, where Finn Allen, any Ford Trophy runs he scored, he was whacking boundaries. Any Plunkett Shield runs he scored, he was whacking boundaries. Bevon Jacobs and Tim Robinson have scored big runs in accordance with the formats. One last thing with the Women's Super Smash. Best bowlers, Eden Carson, Fran Jonas, Lee Kasprick. We've got Kirsty Gordon, English international, Amelia Kerr, Chamariata Patu, Sri Lankan international, Ocean Bartlett. That is 7 bowlers who have got 5 wickets heading into the Canterbury Otago game day today. All of them are spinners. And the Carson, Jonas, Kasprick, all White Fern spinners. Amelia Kerr's got 5 wickets. She's a White Fern spinner. And then Ocean Bartlett, young leggy from CD, is the other bowler who's got 5 wickets. So we got 2 leggies, 2 offies. Kasprick's a bit of a mystery spinner, and Fran Jonas is a lefty. So we got 5 Kiwi spinners who have got 5+ wickets at the top of the Women's Super Smash charts. And we've got 3 different styles of spin. Just seems nice. It's just stuff I like to see. 2 leggies, 2 offies, and a lefty finger spinner. So given the strength of White Ferns cricket is spin bowling, I don't expect any Super Smash spinner to step up to the White Ferns to earn a spot in the White Ferns. The main thing I think the White Ferns are looking for right now is powerful hitters. Batters who score quickly, and that's why I was high on Bella James. She hasn't quite scored runs recently in the Super Smash. Maybe she'll do it today. But the thing the White Ferns need are batters who can score quickly and score fairly consistently, which is hard to do, but maybe just score quickly. But that is to say, I don't really see any spinner stepping up to the White Ferns anytime soon. But shout out to Ocean Bartlett. And shout out, there's a lot of good spinners around Aotearoa on the women's side as well. That's a lot of cricket. I think that's the end of the cricket area. We've had the net session. Now we need to talk some football. And if we're talking football, there's only one place to start, and that is the Wellington Phoenix woman who had a victory on the weekend. And it was a very interesting victory because the player who got the ball at halfway and dribbled and then shot from the outside the box scored a goal, which I think might be her second pretty damn impressive goal in a matter of weeks.
Very similar goals too.
Is Grace Jale, who you were asking rhetorical questions about. You were curious about what Grace Jale is doing. What's her best position? Has she stepped up? Blah, blah, blah. And then she comes out with 2 goals, and she just scored goals, and I think you're fired up. So I'll just stop talking and I'll throw it over to you. Grace Jale. She scored the goals, maybe got a bit of confidence, maybe tapping into her potential and all the stuff that has seen her be consistently in the football Ferns, consistently get A-League jobs. But also, my question is, like, has she settled into a role during this period with the Wellington Phoenix?
I think she's starting to. Because, all them questions I was asking of Grace Jale a couple of weeks ago perhaps maybe weren't so rhetorical after all if she's suddenly answering a few of them. And one of those, like the main overwhelming part of that is, where are you best suited to what role gets the best out of you for yourself and for the Wellington Phoenix, and also potentially with a football Ferns context in mind as well, because she's someone who's played a lot for the football Ferns and does actually have a pretty good record of goal scoring. Like, I think she's got something like a goal every 1 in every 3 games, which is about the best in the Ferns system right now, especially with Hannah Wilkinson having retired. However, I think all of those goals were against Oceania teams. I think every single one of the goals she scored has been against Oceania teams across the last 2 World Cup qualifying / Olympic qualifying type, whatever, Nations Cup, whatever they are, just events that she's participated in. So perhaps there are some bloated figures there. And there's, even then, when she was the top scorer for the Ferns at the Olympic qualifying early last year, it was like, well, she should have scored more. Like, she missed a penalty in one of the games. She missed a couple of good, like, close-in chances. I think it was 1 or 2 headers that just didn't even look confident about, which is a little bit of a concerning when she's a tall, strong player who you expect would be good in the air. So there's ways in which maybe that has flattered to deceive, but also it's, she's been thrust into a role with the football Ferns like a few others have around her age as well, where it's just like there were no other attackers. They didn't nurse a second tier of attackers. They didn't have I'm talking in like sort of the 2010s era. They didn't really have a succession plan there. A bunch of them retired at once, and you just had to chuck in the youngsters rather than being able to do what the Blackcaps are doing with Bevon Jacobs, perhaps, of like bring them in, have them in a squad, let them get an idea of it, but don't necessarily throw them straight in there in the deep end. A lot of players like Grace Jale, Gabby Rennie, Jackie Hand, Indy Riley, a lot of these players were thrown in the deep end for the football Ferns because there just wasn't depth in those positions. Now they are the depth, so but there's suddenly, we'll see what this looks like when the football Ferns next play, but there are a lot of other players from outside that Olympic squad in those positions who are suddenly starting to put their hands up too. So there is pressure on some of these players to perform, and Grace Jale is probably one of the ones who has a good reputation and has done very good things, but maybe hasn't done them consistently enough to maybe justify the hype, certainly, of her signing coming back to the Wellington Phoenix. So it was like, well, where is she best suited? Is she a winger? Should she be playing essentially as an attacking midfielder, as a striker, maybe as a secondary striker, which I think maybe is the position I would have lent on, as someone who plays off of a goal scoring striker who has the ability to drop in, link up, and create and stuff like that. But that's kind of the role that Alyssa Wynnham's playing at the Wellington Phoenix at the moment. So that's not really on either. What we've seen from Grace Jale in the last few weeks is her being used after a period in which she was playing off the bench, like wasn't in the starting lineup for a few weeks, but she's come back in and is playing more as a left winger. And that seems to suit pretty nicely. Like her work rate's pretty good. You often get the feeling with Jale, like maybe it's not so much about is she putting in enough effort, but it's like are you putting in the effort at the times when it matters the most? But I don't know. It's almost like she just needed to find the kind of anchor to her performances. And in the last couple of weeks, she's belted two fantastic shots. One of them probably should have been saved, the first one, but the one against Perth, you weren't saving that. That was just a banger into the bottom corner, a fantastic shot. Maybe this is it. Like she's found a little bit of depth with these worm burning shots and like low into the bottom corner. Well, that might open up the rest of her game as well. I mean, we saw in the Perth one, she dribbled into that position. That was technically an assist from the goalkeeper as well, which is a rarity that's always funny when that happens in football, where the keeper booted it up to her and about halfway, she carries it about 30 meters and then shoots bottom corner. But if she's got that, you can't let her keep dribbling into those positions anymore if you're an opposition A-League team. Like you know now she's scored two goals like this in the space of a couple of weeks. You can't let her run in those positions. You got to close her down. If you close her down, you create space for Alyssa Wynnham, for Olivia Ferguson, for maybe Emma Main or Mibe Tanaka or whoever else is on the other side. Like just having that thing, that like sort of anchoring element to your game. And we have seen Alyssa Wynnham try a few shots from this range and not get any power on them whatsoever. So maybe that's not her element. She would rather be feeding a sneaky ball through or throwing in a step over and dribbling into the area or whatever. But in order to do that, she needs the defense to step up a little bit rather than standing off and letting her shoot. So having someone like Grace Jale angling in with that kind of putting ideas in the defender's head, that matters. That helps. And the Phoenix have been a very good defensive team all season outside of the first half of the season. Where they've struggled to get results is in turning decent enough performances in midfield and very strong defensive performances into are you creating enough chances? Are you scoring enough goals? Whatever. Even against Perth, they had a bit of that, where the first half was pretty even. They didn't really create a whole lot, but then Jale comes and scores a great goal early in the second half. And from there, they absolutely dominated. Once they scored the goal and forced Perth to come out of their system a little bit more and like go at them, step forward, creates more space, opens the game up, and the Phoenix just kept hitting them on the break and doing very good thing. Eventually led to another goal. I think it was Lara Wall crossing it in for a very good header from Olivia Ferguson. I think I got those goals around the right way. I forget, but like that's how you. In fact, they probably should have won 3 or 4-0. They created other chances. They looked really good, and this was just such an encouraging performance coming back after a defeat the week before. But what was in its own way an encouraging defeat as well, because they only narrowly lost to Melbourne City away. They were leading for a while there in that game. They played pretty well and maybe deserved something from that one too. But they bounced straight back at home. 2-0 win against Perth Glory. They're sitting inside the top 6, I'm pretty sure, at the moment, and frankly should be expecting to stay in the top 6. I will write about them at some point. I think they might have a midweek game, so I might have to wait till next week, actually. We'll see how the schedule works out. But I do want to write about this because this has been a thing that they've been aiming for from the start. They haven't made the finals yet. They should make the finals this season, the way they're playing, and especially if Grace Jale is going to continue to bang in goals from distance, or at least put the idea in the defenders' heads to where that's something they have to focus on and create that space, like I'm saying, for others around her, and just give the team something to work around in attack, because they've been looking for this a bit. They've been looking of sort of like they've got the small ball stuff they talk about a lot, but how do they turn that into goals? How do they turn that into shots and chances? Well, we're starting to see some of that. So, yeah, fantastic win from them on the weekend, and they've been in great form for a couple months now. They've after how everything started in the men's A-League, it's actually the women's Phoenix team that are the most consistent, most in form of the Kiwi A-League sides at the moment.
most consistent, most informed, but they did go win, draw, win, loss, win, which isn't consistent. But okay, they are in a nice.
Consistent performances, but
They're in a nice
yeah.
spot. They're in a nice spot. And Thursday night they take on Western Sydney Wanderers, who are second to last. So hopefully, a couple more goals, one more win for the Wellington Phoenix women. And the men. It seems like there's going to be a bit of a break coming up in the A-League. Is that correct?
I don't know. There's no they might just have a bye because there's
Well, it
no
says the
international
A-League
break.
page has Tuesday, January 7th, then Friday, January 31st. So I don't know what's happened out there, if we're just tripping away, I'm not sure. But my question though, we had a Wellington Phoenix loss, we had an Auckland FC draw. Which performance offered more happiness?
Well, there seems to be fixtures all the way through. I don't know. The website is just a bit wonky sometimes, so I blame them. Which performance? Well, I'd say it's the Auckland FC one. Definitely was the better. I thought it was a 0-0 draw against Melbourne Victory at home on New Year's Day. It was a little bit of a dull game. It wasn't there like two good defensive teams kind of cancelled each other out, but I think that's a good place for Auckland FC to be in, where they're a good defensive team capable of cancelling things out, grinding out a point against a team that is, up and around them on the ladder. Melbourne Victory are one of the better teams in the league this season, and you'd prefer to win your home games, but that's a good solid point that doesn't do their season any harm. And most importantly about it is that in the last 2 weeks, they really do seem to have regained that defensive solidity that they started the season with, then lost it briefly after Dan Hall got injured, and they had to go looking for solutions. And it seems the solution that's worked the best is perhaps the obvious one, which is, well, you've got Tommy Smith there. I know you like him as a closer, but he's also your only other centre back in the squad. So maybe you just need to start him alongside Nando Painika. Smith's a good passer, so he's good with the ball at his feet. He always has been. So if he's a left footer having to play right centre back, that's fine. He can do that, and he has done that pretty well. And Auckland FC are less of a build it up from the back kind of team than the Phoenix anyway. So I don't think that really matters too much of those passing angles, not nearly as much as it would for the Knicks. In the way that we've seen them tinkering with their back lines in order to try find the right solutions there. With Auckland FC, it was just a bit more obvious. And Hiroki Sakai he's so good at right back. He was a good, solid centre back, but he's so good at right back. Put him in a position where he can be one of the best players in the A-League. Don't put him in the position where you're turning one of the best players in the A-League into just an adequate role player. Put him in the place where he excels. Tommy Smith steps in alongside Nando Painika. Francis de Vries just got voted A-League Player of the Month or whatever, but those people don't take those things seriously. They're voted on by fans, and whenever they're voted on by fans, they get spammed. The Phoenix players always win this because the Phoenix kept spamming them over the last season, and now apparently Auckland FC has an online army as well. So this is good stuff from the Kiwi A-League fans. Keep spamming these things, keep winning them, but don't take the awards themselves too seriously. But De Vries has been excellent, and that's a solid back four, which in the last 2 weeks has been really good for them, and regained what they regained the identity that they showed at the start of the season. So I think that's really reassuring for Auckland FC. The Phoenix, not so much. They were pretty bad in losing to Melbourne City. They had one shot compared to about 20 odd for Melbourne City. However, as I wrote in the newsletter, I kind of felt there was the depressed vibes came out from the Phoenix fans in the wake of that result, where I'm watching this thinking, this is a bad day at the office. This isn't good, but also they conceded early, but then kept it at 1-0 for a very long time. They were playing against a team that had a lot of shots, but like we saw last season, most of those shots outside the box, low percentage things. Their XG was like 1.1 or something like that. So they weren't getting a lot out of those shots. So really felt like the Phoenix defense outside of the early goal they conceded and then the late goal that they conceded to clinch it. They had Melbourne City where they wanted them. They just didn't have a link in midfield. And Alex Rufer wasn't playing, so that's part of it. But also, even when Rufer is playing, I think they're still missing that where the Nagasawa, Retre, Rufer trio, three really good midfielders, but maybe all a little bit too similar to each other. And I'm not sure that you have a guy in that team who can do for them what Anoli Longo is doing for the Phoenix women at the moment, which is not just collecting the ball from the fence, but advancing it and carrying it forward, rolling on the ball, like being able to, it's not about doing what Grace Jale did and dribbling 30 meters and then shooting. It's about, can you dribble 2 meters to open up the space for someone else? Does the Phoenix almost play a little bit too much? It's like it's 1 or 2 touch passes when they're trying to work it out through the midfield. And sometimes you just, you put your foot on the ball, or sometimes you roll on the ball when you collect it just to put the defender, the half turn stuff, the half turn the defender and pick out a pass to open up the other side of the pitch or whatever, or these kind of things, which also help your wingbacks or fullbacks, whichever formation they're playing, also gives them more time to get forward, and therefore you get players in support of Costa Barbarouses rather than just watching Costa run around by himself. Like, I think they need something there as a link. Last season it was Ben Old because he would do those Grace Jale dribbles, pick up the ball in halfway and run for ages. You're not going to replace that skill set. It's a very unique one. It's why he's found his way to the French top flight, is because they went looking for someone who can do that, and they had to go all the way to Ben Old in Wellington to find a guy who could do that for them. And he was doing that for him until he got injured. And don't know how long he's still out for, but I'm guessing he'd have at least another month on the sideline. It was a bit of a gnarly injury. But yeah, I guess the dream is that Marco Rojas will do it when he comes back and is playing consistently. And we saw some glimpses of this kind of thing from him, but I almost think they need someone deeper as well. And maybe it's just a matter of Retro and Nagasawa changing how they play a little bit to adapt. We'll see. Chibi is a very intelligent man. He's coming up with ideas. He's thinking about this stuff constantly, but yeah, a little bit too rigid in how they play in the midfield at the moment. But overall, I mean, I don't think it was a pretty terrible performance, but I don't think it's a terrible performance that belies a terrible team. I think it's just a bad day. It's not like that's the consistent level they're at. And yeah, well, we'll see how they bounce back from that. It's a pretty nasty one, but I do think that's the kind of game, especially away in Melbourne where they've always struggled. It's the kind of game where you can just you can wipe the memory clear of that one afterwards and just move on with a better performance next week.
That better performance next week will be on Saturday against Adelaide United in Wellington, but Adelaide United are second in the A-League. So I don't know if they're going to get that performance against Adelaide. Auckland are away, distance derby in Perth. Perth are second to last. So
they did recall Ollie Sale though.
Oh, big Donny.
And then they
Ollie
lost
Sale.
like 4-3 to a 95th minute bicycle kick. So Ollie Sale just can't catch a break, that dude.
Someone who has caught a break in the Flying Kiwis department, Sarpreet Singh. Clinical goal off the shoulder. I think he headed home another goal. So he's in nice touch with, who's he playing for? UD Lieria. So shout out to him. Lieria. We also had Andre de Jong scored a double. And Matt Garbett, superhero for NAC Breda last season. Big time. Fan favourite. Lots of good vibes there, but you seem to think he's on the outer with NAC Breda. We also had a goal for Nico Kerr and Calcio Padova, which you described as a match winner. It did come in the 37th minute, so...
Yeah, but it was a 1-0 win.
It won the match for Calcio Padova. Roll through those Flying Kiwis, bits and bobs, hard and fast, quickly and efficiently.
Well, Sarpreet Singh is the leader in Flying Kiwis this week because he is superb. He's just yeah, he's turned up in Portugal. Took him a little while to get going, bit of an injury at the start, but from the moment that he scored his first goal, they've been a different side. They did change their manager around the same time as well, so that's also a factor. But I choose to believe that Sarpreet Singh is the major factor in this whole thing. He comes off the bench, scores a winning goal a couple weeks ago. Um, and since then, he's scored 4 goals in 5 games, including that one. He started the other 4 games. They've won 4 of those 5 games. So the team just is on a bit of a roll. They're not so far removed from the promotion playoff chances as well. I don't think they'll get promoted, but they're at least putting themselves in a place where they can compete for it and build off the back of that. And you never know what might happen because Matt Garbett's NAC Breda are a very good example of a team where if you just get yourself in the mix, who knows? They were the lowest qualifying team in the Dutch playoffs from the second division last year, and then just went on a roll where they beat a bunch of teams that were better than them all season. They just beat a bunch of them in a row and got promoted, and then changed their manager, and then their manager changed their style a bit. And Matt Garbett, who was he was in and out of the team last year, so it's not like he was a locked in first 11 player, but he also hasn't been that this year. He's been in and out, and he's played a bunch of different positions, and he hasn't found a settled role. And now their coach has left him behind for their training camp in Spain during the winter break, and has not basically, he's explicitly told the media that Garbett just hasn't developed enough, and it doesn't quite, he likes him as a person, but he's picking a football team here, and he just, it's not working out. It's not you, it's me. I don't know, but they've told him he can look elsewhere, and so I think he will find himself another club within the next couple of weeks. He's been told to do so at least. So bit of a bummer there, but also it's not a bummer until you see where he turns up. And even if you see where he turns up and it's not as good as where he was before, well, Sarpreet Singh is a good example of how that doesn't necessarily matter. Like Sarpreet Singh's played for Bayern Munich, sure. Now he's playing second division mid-table in Portugal. That feels like a big drop, but also he's playing. He's playing a lot. He's got a settled role. They're letting him loose as an attacking midfielder, and he's doing great things. He scored 4 goals in 5 games. He looks confident. He looks happy. Like you can see it in his celebrations from the goals. Like he's loving it. He's enjoying just being able to play football again and play football well and win games and contribute to those wins and all this good stuff. Where just like smiling Sarpreet Singh is a beautiful thing. It's been far too much in his career of the opposite of that. So he's very, very, very overdue these good vibes that he's experiencing, and hopefully long may it continue. But this is a lot like Elijah Just moved to Austria as well, where he goes to a second tier team in Austria. People are thinking, well, why, he can do better than that. Surely he can play at a higher level. Like, yeah, he could. He could sit on the bench for a team in the top division of Denmark like he used to do, or he could start every week for a team in the second division in Austria and be the man. And it's the version of Elijah Just that's been starting every week in Austria and scoring a bunch of goals, which has carried on into All Whites games recently, where he's continued to start a bunch of games and score a bunch of goals. Like that's the version of him that's been the most effective for the All Whites, not the guy who was sitting on the bench and popping up here or there. So hopefully I don't have to say hopefully the same thing will happen with Sarpreet Singh, because he always is that guy when he plays for the All Whites. But the fact that he's match fit, the fact that he's confident, that's only going to help him. That's actually better for the national team to have him at a lower level, but more confident. So great stuff there. Love seeing Sarpreet Singh doing well. Who else did you mention? Nico Kerwins is not this. It's not that interesting because it's third tier Italy. I've sort of faded out on him a little bit because since his injury, he wasn't playing so much. But he's had a nice little pocket recently. He started, I think, 4 games in a row. He just scored his first goal of the season, playing as a right wing back. He might get himself back into all whites contention. I think that right back spot is definitely a vulnerable one, which is gonna help him there because it's Tim Payne and kind of no one else. So if you want to be the backup there, you've got an opportunity. Whereas on the left side, who wants to be Libby Kikache's backup? Well, you've got Francis de Vries, you've got Dalton Wilkins, you've got James McGarry, you've got Sam Sutton, you've got probably someone else I'm forgetting about. You've got a lot of options there who can play left back. It's kind of just Tim Payne and no one else and right back. Maybe Callan Elliott would probably be the next in line, I would suggest. Possibly, I'd say possibly Matt Sheridan, but he doesn't really play right back ever for the Phoenix, so probably not.
Sakai?
Unfortunately, he's been to multiple World Cups with Japan, so we won't be able to get him on the eligibility status.
Because I
So
did like I remember like Andrew Durante, he qualified for New Zealand and then he left New Zealand.
he played 20 or 30 odd times for the All Whites first, so he put in some work. But yeah, then he left, and I don't think he'll ever live in New Zealand again. But it was nice while it lasted. Um,
I'd
this is
rather have
also why
Sakai. I'd rather have Sakai.
Sakai would be our best ever right back, so that would be cool. Unfortunately, the ship sailed long before he ever heard of us. We'll see. But was there someone who else was on the list? Oh, Andre De Jong.
Yeah.
Speaking of possible all-weight call-ups, I've been saying this for a little while. His form to start the season in South Africa was great, was deserving of a call-up for the All Whites. Maybe just the problem is that he's not different enough from the players that are there to get a point. Like Chris Wood is going to play as a number 9. Ben Wayne's probably going to be in squads. Maybe Ben Wayne hasn't been doing that much this season. Maybe Andre De Jong can push him out. Max Mata's also in there, but he's playing off the bench for Auckland FC. So maybe there's an option as a backup 9. That's also not the role he plays in South Africa. He's more as a number 10, which means he's competing with Sarpreet Singh and Elijah Just, who are in fantastic form at the moment. So yeah, it's sketchy. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works, but if he does get picked, he deserves it because he's been great. And he just scored 2 goals in a 2-0 win in a Confederation Cup tie for Stellenbosch, which Confederation Cup is like Africa's Europa League. It's the second tier continental competition. They lost their first 2 games. This is the first time Stellenbosch have ever been there, but also De Jong did play a little bit for Amazulu previously in this competition. And Jeremy Brockie played quite a bit. In fact, I think Michael Boxall might have still been there when Supersport were there one season as well. So there's a little bit of recent history in this competition. Nothing before that, but a little bit of recent history. And Andre De Jong is adding to that. But there is another name that you left off as well. The boy Stipe Ukich, the phenom, the Bevon Jacobs of New Zealand football, even though he's he's just turned 18, and because he's just turned 18, he's allowed to sign a professional deal overseas, and because he's allowed to sign a professional deal overseas, he's done it. He's signed with NK Istra in 1961 in Croatia, their top division. They're probably in a relegation battle, but it's top division Croatian football, and if he makes his debut, there'll be some their winter break at the moment, like a lot of them, so there'll be some friendly stuff first, couple of weeks to get acclimatized. If he makes his debut at the first possible opportunity, it'll be against Dinamo Zagreb. Dinamo Zagreb, in that fixture, will have just a few days earlier played, like during the midweek before that game, before the Croatian League comes back. During the midweek before that, they will have just played a Champions League game against Arsenal, and they've just hired Fabio Cannavaro, Italian legend. I think, did he coach Real Madrid at one point? He definitely played for Real Madrid. But Italian World Cup winning captain, I think he was when they did that once upon a time. He's their new manager. So if you're wondering why Stipe Ukich has gone straight to Europe rather than trying to sort of consolidate things in the A-League first, well, that's why, because he can go straight to that level where he's playing against a Fabio Cannavaro coach Champions League team.
When should I be keeping an eye out for Stipe Ukich stuff? When's that game you're talking about?
That is in 3 weeks. I think it's whatever the 24th, 25th, 26th, something around there. Like last week of the month, basically. When you see Dinamo Zagreb playing against Arsenal, you know we're counting down. But we'll get an idea maybe from some of his friendlies. I'll track some of that to see if he's actually getting good game minutes. Because often it's like an 18-year-old will join a overseas team. They're sitting in the academy side or the reserves for a little while first. I don't get the impression that that's the case with Stipe Ukich, though. I think they've signed him very much for an immediate first team picture. We'll see how accurate my initial inkling is there, but the way they're talking about him definitely sounds like a guy that they want in and around their first team to try and get them a few more goals, because they've struggled with goals and they are trying to avoid relegation. And because they're a team in the bottom half of the table, that probably gives them a bit more scope as well to take a punt on someone like that. But my guess is he's going to be involved pretty quickly for these guys. Might be a bench role, but probably will be a bench role. But we'll see how he tracks. But like I've said in the past about him, he is a player who, despite his age, he's tall, he's pretty strong, he's quick, he's athletic, and he's very, very scrappy. He's got that sort of mongrel mentality about him as well. I don't think he will have trouble fitting in. I think he's got all the elements that you want for a guy to go over there and um, to be himself from day one for a good team like that. So yeah, we'll see. I will be tracking this one closely because, like I was saying about tracking Lara Wall and seeing her doing well in the A League, I definitely feel an affinity for a guy who can go straight from National League to playing at a top flight European club at age 18. At age 18 and 0 days, because he basically signed the thing on his birthday. They were just waiting for him to be old enough to be able to sign.
Beauty. Just another young Kiwi who is amazing at
That's
sport.
another one.
There's no shortage of them. Obviously, we're talking outside the rugby union netball bracket. Because that's what we do here at the Niche Cache. And what we do at the end of the podcast over summer is roll through a bit of rugby league information. And keen observers would have noted that most of these rugby league observations come directly from the newsletter on a Monday. So if you're signed up to the newsletter, you already know all of this shit. And to be honest, if you're reading the Niche Cache, listening to the Niche Cache, following the Niche Cache, you already know this shit. Because we repeat. To be honest, that's all we do. We just repeat stuff over and over again across all these sports, themes, trends. They get repeated and we just keep hammering it home until someone pays attention. Yesterday in the newsletter, I did a stats profile for the 2024 New Zealand Warriors, the Aotearoa Warriors, who have given up the Temple of Mount Smart to Auckland FC for the summer. But they will return. They will return to the Temple of Mount Smart in a couple of months. Imagine there might be an overlap with the bit of AFC.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I hadn't thought about that.
With the Temple of Mount Smart, but that's all good because it's a great stadium. Great place to watch rectangular sports. So the NRL.com, when you try and do statistics by an average, so we go team statistics, we go full table, we go 2024, okay, we can't use the totals because some teams have played 27 games, some teams have played 24 games. None of that's useful. We go average, and every team, we got 6 games, 5 games, and 7 games. So we go to NRL.com, nothing there is useful to me in this discussion. So we had to go over to foxsports.com.au and we go Fox Sports Lab and we go teams and we go averages per game and we figure out where they are ranked. So all of this is from Fox Sports and their average team stats per game. I'm going to roll through all the Warriors rankings. This is not all the stats that Fox Sports Lab offers, just some crucial ones because some of them aren't that useful. I'll just rank where the Warriors, I will list where the Warriors were ranked and then I'll get into a couple of key points. Just bear with me because we've got a few stats here to work through. Points scored 11th. Tries scored 12th. Runs 2nd. Run meters 3rd. Line breaks 13th. Tackle breaks 6th. Offloads 14th. Tackled in opposition 20 1st. Completion rate 1st. Goal kicking 13th. Kicks 4th. Kick meters 9th. Forced dropouts 5th. Kick return meters 2nd. Dummy half runs 13th. One pass hit ups 1st. General play passes 12th. Errors 16th. Penalties awarded 5th. Penalties conceded 11th. Points conceded 9th. Tries conceded 9th. Run meters conceded 13th. Offloads conceded, 17th. Missed tackles, 14th. So there's a lot of information there that probably doesn't go well on a podcast, but that was just the introduction to this segment. That's where the Warriors are ranked. Now, if we're working in, this always trips people up. Errors, the Warriors were 16th, which means they are the second best team for errors. They have made the second lowest errors by being 16th. Offloads conceded, they are 17th, meaning they conceded the lowest number of offloads per game last year, 6.2. Now I'm just going to double check these on the fly, because always got to second guess yourself. That's what we're doing here. Always just second guessing yourself, making sure your ideas stand up. Offloads conceded. Yep, Warriors 6.2. First, Storm 10.5. Broncos 10.2. Dolphins 10. So that's correct. The Warriors were the only team below 7 offloads conceded per game. Wow. So when we're working in like errors and offloads conceded, 16th or 17th means you're first or second in the NRL. Missed tackles, 14th. That means you're fourth for the amount of missed tackles you're making. Then we get into, so if you're listening closely, the Warriors were first for tackled in opposition 20, first for completion rate, second for kick return meters, first for one pass hit ups, third for run meters per game. Being, let's go points scored. What did I say? Points scored, they were 11th, but they were first in tackled in opposition 20 and first in completion rate. So the Warriors had the best.
And the run meters counts towards that as well, didn't it? Like they're getting up into the territory.
Correct.
And maybe not scoring the points.
Correct. She just let me finish the idea there. So the Warriors have the best completion rate in the NRL. And as you said, they have no issues getting downfield. Said it all summer. The Warriors get downfield, but it starts with kick return meters because they're second. They were second. So the Warriors were second. This is how the Warriors get downfield, basically. They were second for kick return meters, first for one pass hit ups, first for completion rate, and first for tackled in opposition 20. So the Warriors, again, I'm just going to repeat myself. So they have no issues getting downfield. But they had issues scoring points. Now, if you're questioning me on a hostile day, or I'm feeling a bit aggressive, a little bit robust, rather confident, which isn't very often, some of that feels like the duty of the halfback. Right? So that's something to watch out for. But I'm working in a few different ideas here. That's a basic Warriors game model. Because they weren't very high in offloads. 14th in offloads. So they're not a very high offloading team. A lot of these stats, if the Warriors are ranked between 6th and 13th, there's not much to learn there. That's just kind of middle of the NRL. Bit of housekeeping. So the Warriors don't offload much, but they're first in completion rate. Now they also, so they don't score many points, but they have no issues getting downfield. Run meters, we've talked about that before. But then you get into the game kind of model, the game style. One pass hit-ups tells you a lot. General play passes, they're also 12th. So this should make sense to you. One pass hit-ups, they're first. General play passes, they're 12th. If you're doing the most one pass hit-ups, you're probably not going to have many passes, right? It's like if you're playing Route 1 soccer football, you're not going to be having Barcelona levels of passing. It seems rather obvious. Kind of losing my train of thoughts here. But that goes into your completion rate. If you're making one pass hit-ups, you're going to be completing high. And obviously, high completion rate means low errors. None of that smells like a bad team. Again, I'll repeat, the Warriors were third in run meters. I'll take out the tackle in opposition 20 because I'm not sure that's a good stat. Third in run meters, first in completion rate, second kick return meters, second in the fewest errors, the best team at limiting offloads, and pretty good fourth for the fewest missed tackles. Like, none of this tells you that the Warriors were bad. To be honest, the way I view the stat profile makes the Warriors feel like a better team than my memory was, which is in tune with my beliefs about the halfback. Because everything around it was pretty good. They were getting downfield. They're going through their process. They're getting to where they want to get. They're getting down to the 20-meter line. But they just didn't score many points. They were 12th, they were 11th for points scored and 12th for tries scored. But they were still 6th for tackle breaks. So they were 6th for tackle breaks, but 13th for line breaks. So again, they're not scoring as many tries, not scoring as many points, not getting the line breaks, but they're able to get downfield and they're able to bust tackles. You talk so I can catch my thoughts.
Well, that's really interesting, the way in which that paints such a clear picture, just looking at those stats of exactly how they go through their sets of, get the ball from the kick, you run it back hard, a lot of one-out passes, quick, speed around the ruck kind of stuff. We flip it off to a runner, he runs it up. Normally it's their outside backs doing a lot of this work as well. And then they get the ball forward. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They get into the opposition 20. And then they run into a brick wall because they don't have the finesse to turn that territory into points, which I think does align pretty clearly with how I remember that team. I won't say his name. Okay. But good, they went through a few different they had a lot of players in the halves, because I don't think it's just the halfback. The halfback bears the most responsibility, but your 5/8 is doing a lot of the creativity. Your fullback's getting forward doing some creative stuff. Your dummy half is doing some creative stuff as well.
But then when the halfback wasn't playing, they also won games.
When one of their halfbacks wasn't playing, they won a few games. I mean, they beat the Penrith Panthers in one match with a supposedly weakened team. So they were an up and down side. They were a team that was capable of some big highs, and also they had a couple of just abysmal, horrendous defeats in there as well. So that doesn't sound like a bad team to me either. It just sounds like an inconsistent team, and maybe a team that never quite figured out the right formula in every position, because they had the basis of it. They had the blueprints there. They just didn't quite have the stuff on top of it. And part of that was because what worked for them the year before gets scouted and nullified by opposition teams who have a better idea of how to counter that, or how to counter him in this team. Perhaps is still no names, but there's no way you look at those stats, and I mean there's no way you look at those stats and think that's a platform that disappears from season to season. Like, that's still going to be there. It's just a matter of, can you find something else on top of it? The one reason I hesitated is because they have lost Adam Fanua-Blake, who was the main meter eater in that team. But I mean, they've signed James Fisher-Harris. He's not going to come in there and put up Fanua-Blake stats in terms of run meters, but he's going to enable other guys to pick up stuff around him as well. I don't think anyone's looking at that as being in any way weakening the team, even though they've lost one of the 5 best props in the game, replaced him with one of the 5 best props in the game. All right, sweet as. In fact, that might even give them a little bit more of that finesse, perhaps. Maybe. Well, we'll see. That's hard to predict that stuff now, but they should still have that same identity, right? Like they should still have that same ability to roll through your meters early in the set, get a bit of a roll on, get your territory, and then the question of the off season is what can you do with your halves pairing and your sort of creative players to make sure you rank a little bit higher next time in points scored, because if you're not in the top 8 for points scored, you're probably not going to be in the top 8 for standings either.
And points scored means tries and goal kicking.
Yes.
That's
yes.
how you get your points. And the Warriors were 12th for tries and 13th for goal kicking. To me, thinking back, I don't have the stats for 2023, but I think it's fairly similar. Like, yes, you would have scored more points.
I would guess so.
They would have conceded less points, but the Warriors still, it's the Webster model pretty much, which is a bad version of the Panthers model. High completions, get downfield, and just keep working over the opposition that way. But my hunch is that in 2023, they would have been higher in general play passes because you had a lot more razzle-dazzle in how the middle forwards were passing the ball. And a lot of tries came from players who were not the halves passing other players into gaps. Tohu Harris, Dylan Walker, Adam Whanua-Blake, like those type of characters were putting other dudes into holes. Wade Egan around the ruck as well. So I think you might have seen a few more general play passes, but you also had a fairly consistent team week in, week out. Last season, I think Webster had to adapt his general style of footy to the players he had who may not have been capable or prepared to do everything that he wanted in the same way that a consistent roster in 2023 was able to do. This is another impressive little pocket, though. Penalties awarded, 5th. Penalties conceded, 11th. So the Warriors were roughly, this isn't true, I don't think, but they were kind of almost top 5 for penalties awarded, top 5 for fewest penalties conceded. I think they were 6th for penalties conceded, fewest penalties conceded. Again, that's a good team. And that's not a team that's getting, all Warriors fans and believers of the referee will understand that maybe the penalties conceded came in, or more so penalties not awarded and penalties conceded came in very high profile moments. But generally, I don't know how you can look at the Warriors being 5th for penalties awarded and 11th for penalties conceded and think the refs are screwing over the Warriors, or the Warriors are ill-disciplined. I think that tells you that the Warriors fairly good with the referees. Penalties awarded, penalties conceded. They're not in the middle. They're closer to the better zones in both of those stats. Now again, points conceded 9th. Tries conceded 9th. Run meters conceded 13th. Offloads conceded 17th. None of that's bad. Sure, it can all be better. Maybe top 8 points conceded. Maybe top 8 tries conceded. Or should I say top 8 for the fewest points conceded. Fewest tries conceded. But the Warriors were 13th for run meters conceded, which means they were the 5th-ish best team for run meters conceded. And if you top five-ish for fewest run meters conceded, and you are the best team at conceding the fewest offloads, you're winning a collision or two. You're stopping the meters, but you're also stopping the offload. Now, some of that's collision, some of that is contact, some of that's aggression. I think a bit of it is wrestling. And I'm a big believer in the Warriors wrestle. Obviously, you got Kaikara France coaching their wrestling. You've got a lot more, just by that straight up and down, you've got a lot more MMA grappling involved in how they wrestle. Like, it's not just like you're getting a jiu-jitsu dude in to coach you on points and try and integrate it into rugby league. It's not like you've got an Olympic wrestling dude coaching you how to do things and trying to figure out how to get into rugby league. The Warriors have a wrestling coaching, wrestling skill development and coaching area, which to me seems and appears, and I believe is perfectly aligned with rugby league. Because now you've got Kaikara France doing a couple of seasons of it. It's not like you just got a wrestling dude coaching rugby league players on key points about wrestling and grappling. Now you've got Kaikara France instilling a grappling system that is designed for rugby league and the Andrew Webster style of coaching. I'd argue that is evident in run meters conceded, offloads conceded, because all of that's grappling. Well, not all of it. A decent chunk of it is grappling, yeah. You also mentioned the James Fisher-Harris, and I did a Friday newsletter. So all these Warriors stats were in the Monday newsletter. Friday newsletter, I rolled through James Fisher-Harris's stats over his 5 consecutive grand finals for the Panthers. Lost the first one, won 4 in a row. Obviously, he's from Aotearoa. He's the man. Now he's with the Warriors. I don't know if there's a way for me to read this out that makes him a point. Generally, his season stats and all these things, in these 5 seasons, all fairly similar. There's a sharp decrease in his meters per game, going down every year. 2020 lost the grand final, 179 meters per game. That goes down every season to 128 meters per game. He's had, one season there with 54 tackle busts, but it's his only season over 40. He's had one season in there with 32 offloads, but it's his only season with more than 20 offloads. He's been between 91 and 96% tackling in all those years. Winning percentage, 87%, 88%, 91%, 83%, 70%. I feel like you could twist those stats in any direction. My key takeaway is that it's just fairly similar. But the running meters per game are dropping, so they're not necessarily similar. But that brings me to my main point. There's nothing really statistical about Fisher-Harris. There's something we've talked about previously, and you just highlighted it. With Fisher-Harris, we're trying to measure mana. And I'm just a half Pākehā, half Palangi dude who is trying to measure mana. This is it's a tricky task for me to measure mana. Stats don't measure mana. So the only thing we can do is wait to see how the Warriors play. How the presence of James Fisher-Harris impacts those around him. The only way to measure mana, well, you can't measure mana, but the only way to get a gauge of mana is to see it, is to watch it. And If you're not at the Temple of Mount Smart and you're watching through the telly, you should still be able to feel it. Because you're watching the team, and then how do you feel when you're watching the team play with Fisher Harris in the team? But I do think Fisher Harris is going to work well in a team that has no issues getting downfield and was pretty good in their run meters conceded, offloads conceded, was already pretty good in their missed tackle count, was already pretty good in their completion rate, and there's a lot of crossover between the Panthers and the Warriors. There's a crossover with the coach. There's juniors who have gone from the Panthers to the Warriors. I think there's crossover in the style. I think there's crossover in the development pipeline. Now you're bringing in Fisher Harris, who, let's be honest, he's bringing the Panthers. He is bringing a lot of Panthers energy to the Warriors. So I think that's going to be useful as well. But the one thing I kept coming back to was there will be a moment in the first game, I'm pretty confident, the first NRL game, where you're going to have Fisher Harris and Mitchell Barnett standing next to each other in the defensive line. And that's not going to be somewhere you want to run to. Because Mitchell Barnett, he's a bit of a psycho in a lovely way. Fisher Harris, he's a bit of a psycho in a lovely way. Both have, I think in the future we will be able to measure individual line speed, but we can't measure individual line speed right now. But you're going to have Mitchell Barnett and James Fisher Harris as individuals and maybe driving them together as a duo, as a unit, and with other players. I think we're going to have some sort of line speed that Warriors fans haven't seen before. Because the line speed has never been anything associated with the Warriors in my lifetime. And I think if you sprinkle in a bit of Aaron Clark aggression, if you sprinkle in a bit of Marata Niokore aggression, and you start to go out wider, you see a bit of Ali Leotawa, he's going to monster some blokes. Dimitri Vaimonga is going to monster some blokes. Watane Zelezniak loves to rush in off the edge and monster blokes. Okay, we've got a halfback, we've got a utility, Harris Tavita. One of his key strengths is smashing people. He always does it. Now you're starting to see like something that I think Warriors fans can look forward to is how all those pieces come together on top of the foundation of that stat profile, which is, it's not spectacular. It obviously wasn't NRL leading, but there were enough positive signs, and they were first or the best team in a bunch of those stats, which makes me think that the foundations are pretty good. And while we can't measure the mana of Fisher Harris, we can build out the view, the vista of how the pieces might come together.
Yeah, I mean, the measuring mana idea, the person I thought of the most in terms of the sports that I cover closely was Steven Adams. And I think it's one of the reasons why I like that plus-minus stat, especially when it comes to Steven Adams a lot, is because it doesn't seem to say anything specific. It's not even an individual stat, really. It's just saying, did the team outscore the other team while this guy was on the court? Well, he didn't have to have scored any of those points. He didn't have to have gotten any of those rebounds for that to be necessarily the case. But I think that's why I like it, because it's kind of a holistic stat. It just tells you were the team winning. And the nice, boiled down to its very essence, were the team winning in those minutes. If you have a player where they continually seem to be winning during those minutes, it doesn't necessarily tell a full story, but at least gives you a hint of some kind of, this guy's doing something. Whether there's, especially if their stats, but individual stats might be a little bit more, I don't know, mediocre or just slightly more average, or at least just not popping off the page. and yet they're still winning consistently during that, which has been the case throughout Steven Adams' career. It took a long time for people to realize that what he was doing with offensive rebounds and that gets counted in the main box score, so that a little bit less on that, but certainly with his screen assists and his box outs and stuff like that, it took a long time for people to realize how much that was not just a useful thing where it's like, yeah, good on that guy for sticking in there and doing those things, but actually realizing, no, this is helping the teams that he plays for win games of basketball. And it's a lot harder probably to get that idea from a rugby league team, or to get that idea even from a football team. I think because you've got more players on the field at any given time, but also those are more fluid flowing games. Basketball is a little bit more it's because it's back and forth. You can break it down into a smaller thing. You can break it down into little pieces a little bit more, and because it's American, you can break it down into pieces because that's what they like to do. Harder to do that in a rugby league context, but if you could, I'm pretty sure James Fisher-Harris would be right up there. And I mean, as far as trying to find alternative ways of saying the same thing, he's been a key player on a team that's just won a bunch of championships in a row. So you don't really get much more. You're not going to get clear measuring sticks for valuing mana like that, but you can. If you could, he seems like this is as close as you're going to get to a clear case, you know.
And off the top of my head, it does feel like the Panthers would go through a dip in games where Fisher-Harris and Leota were off the field, and then they'd swing back around 55th minute, 60th minute, and get back into the game, seal the win, solely because of Fisher-Harris, not because of Nathan Cleary, Isaiah Dylan Edwards, and those dudes. But that is the Niche Cast for today. We'll be back on Thursday with a bonus podcast. So if you did like this podcast, make sure you give us a thumbs up on YouTube. And if you can give us a 5-star review, maybe a 4.5 if you're feeling a bit on the old Spotify and Apple podcast platforms, that would be great. And if you really, really like it, you can join us on Patreon, where we will be doing that bonus podcast. And of course, we got the newsletter via Substack as well. We appreciate you being here with us. And a glorious, we're getting back into some Aotearoa summer vibes. It wasn't there for a while, but we're getting back into it. Big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, church.